My name is Elizabeth Moore. I'm 34 years old, an HVAC technician in Raleigh, North Carolina, and a single mother to a bright, sweet little girl named Piper. Our house is small, 2 bedrooms, a living room that always feels half toy store, half laundry mountain, but it's ours, cozy, safe, or at least it used to be. 6 months ago, my life flipped in 1 week. It had already been a hard year. 9 months earlier, my husband, now my ex, had walked out without a real explanation. No dramatic fight, no final confession, just an empty closet, a cold goodbye note that didn't even say Piper, and a silence that felt like a door slamming inside my chest. Those first nights alone, I cried after Piper fell asleep, the kind of crying you do into a dish towel so your baby won't wake up and learn fear from your voice. But then she'd reach for me with her tiny hands, clamp her fingers around my shirt like I was the only solid thing in the world. And I'd remember I didn't get to fall apart, not all the way. I'd recently been transferred from irregular shifts to a fixed 8 to 5 schedule. It felt like the first stroke of luck we'd had in months. I could eat dinner with my daughter, put her to bed, be there in the mornings. It felt manageable. Then my body betrayed me. It started as stomach pain that came and went like a warning. Then it turned into a steady knife under my ribs. After 2 weeks and more ER visits than I want to admit, a doctor finally sat across from me, eyes serious in that way that makes your blood go cold. "Elizabeth," Dr. Richardson said, "you need gallbladder surgery next Friday. You'll stay overnight. We can't delay this anymore." I sat there with Piper on my lap, her little shoes tapping against my thigh while she chewed on the strap of my purse like it was the most important job in the world. My first question wasn't about pain. It wasn't even about fear. It was money. "How much?" I asked, already tasting panic. "About $2,400 out of pocket." My throat tightened. On a single income with daycare, diapers, formula, rent, $2,400 wasn't a bill. It was a cliff edge. But the bigger problem wasn't the bill. It was the night. Who would take Piper while I was in the hospital? For days, I tried to pretend I had options. I didn't. The night before, I fed Piper dinner in the kitchen. Tomato sauce on her cheeks, hair sticking up like she'd been struck by baby lightning. She giggled every time I made the spoon fly into her mouth like an airplane. Then my phone rang. "Elizabeth," my mom said, voice deep with worry, "your father and I talked. We can watch Piper on Friday." I looked down at my daughter, the soft curve of her cheek, the way she trusted me so completely it almost hurt. "You don't have to," I said carefully. "I know last time was rough." Last time Piper cried most of the night, missing me. My parents are loving, but they're not young. Mom's back gives her trouble. Dad's blood pressure spikes when he gets stressed. I still remembered them the next morning. Mom slumped on the couch with dark circles under her eyes, Dad fumbling with the coffee like his hands had forgotten how to be steady. "No, no," Mom insisted, "we want to help." Then Dad's warm voice cut in. "Hey, sweetheart, maybe this time we bring her over earlier. Let her get used to it. We can do it." I was considering it, really considering it, when my phone buzzed with a new message. Piper saw the screen light up and reached for it, babbling her baby language like the phone was talking to her. I glanced down. "Savannah, you talking to Mom and Dad? Let me watch Piper. I'll come to your place." My stomach tightened. Savannah was my younger sister. Pretty, loud, full of opinions, and allergic to responsibility. But she could be charming when she wanted. My parents had spoiled her in ways they never spoiled me, like she was made of glass, and the world existed to cushion her. Another message popped up before I even replied. "Savannah, you're making them feel guilty. I'm 25. Young. Full of energy. I'm a better choice." I stared at that sentence while Piper's tiny hand pressed against my cheek, her comfort reflex whenever she sensed my sadness. It was such a small gesture, so innocent, that it nearly broke me. My parents were willing, but I could hear the strain in their voices. Professional babysitting for 16 hours at $20, 20 telos an hour would crush me. And Piper hated strangers. She'd scream like her whole body was a warning siren. Savannah was insisting, enthusiastic, confident. Maybe I thought she'd surprise me. So I told my parents, "Actually, Savannah offered to help. She'll stay at my house. That might be easier for Piper." Mom exhaled with relief that she tried to hide. "Oh, well, that's wonderful. She's younger, more energy." We ended the call, and I kissed Piper's hair, inhaling that warm baby scent like a prayer. I couldn't imagine that decision would lead to something unthinkable. 3 days before surgery, my mood steadied. I started believing again in the idea of family. Even Savannah, annoying as she could be, was showing up when I needed her. Then, around 8 p.m., Savannah called. I answered with Piper asleep on my lap, her breathing soft and even. Savannah didn't waste time. "I'm going to need $800 for Friday night," she said. I sat up so fast Piper stirred. "What?" "You heard me," Savannah replied, calm as if she'd asked for gas money. "Savannah," I whispered harshly, "professional babysitters charge what? $20 an hour? You're asking for $800. "I'm not a stranger," she snapped. "I'm family. I'll actually care about Piper." The audacity of that sentence made my pulse pound. "Care about her?" I repeated. "You're her aunt. You're supposed to care about her without making it a transaction." Savannah sighed like I was exhausting her. "Come on, Elizabeth. What other choice do you have? You need someone urgently, right?" I swallowed down my anger because she was right. I did need someone, and she knew it. I tried to reason. "I already have to pay $2,400 for surgery. I can't—" "I'll stay at your house," she cut in. "Piper will be comfortable. You want her scared with strangers? Or you want her with her aunt?" Piper made a little sound in her sleep, a tiny whimper, and my heart clenched like a fist. In my head, options spun like a broken wheel. Cancel surgery? Doctor said no. Pay a stranger? Piper would panic. Make my parents suffer? Risky. Say yes to Savannah? A gamble. A heavy silence filled the line. Finally, I breathed out the answer I hated. "Fine," I said, voice tight. $800. But you take care of her. This isn't a game. Savannah's satisfaction slipped through her voice like perfume. "Relax. Piper will be treated like a princess. Promise." When I hung up, a dull ache settled under my ribs that had nothing to do with my gallbladder. That Friday, I prepared like a soldier going to war. I wrote Piper's schedule on a big sheet of paper and taped it to the fridge. 6:00 p.m. dinner, 9:00 p.m. bottle before bed, 2:00 a.m. bottle plus diaper change. I measured formula into 4 compartments, lined up clean bottles, wrote instructions like Savannah was an alien who'd never seen a baby. Warm water, shake well, test on wrist. I checked the baby monitor cameras in Piper's room and the living room, making sure they connected to my phone. I made an emergency contact list. Pediatrician, hospital, neighbors. Everything in the house was arranged around one purpose: keep Piper safe while I couldn't. At 5:30 p.m., the doorbell rang. Savannah was 30 minutes late. When I opened the door, she brushed past me like my concern was background noise. "Geez, Elizabeth," she said, rolling her eyes. "I'm here now, aren't I?" Piper squealed from her playpen and reached for her aunt, face lit up with trust. And Savannah strangely didn't pick her up. She glanced at the fridge, at the bottles, at my carefully written lists, and her expression tightened like I'd insulted her. For 20 minutes, I explained everything anyway. Every step, every time Piper wakes, the diaper rash cream, the way Piper likes her lullaby sung the same way every night. Savannah kept interrupting. I get it, she snapped. "Go handle your surgery. Stop acting like I'm stupid." I wanted to say, "I'm not worried you're stupid. I'm worried you don't care enough to try." But the taxi honked outside and pain flickered under my ribs like a warning. So I swallowed my fear and picked up Piper, kissed her forehead, and handed her over. Piper didn't cry. She just stared at me through the window as I walked to the car, eyes wide, face quiet, like she was memorizing me. Something in her expression didn't belong on a baby. A sadness too old. As the taxi pulled away, my chest felt tight. I pressed my palm to the glass like it could hold the feeling in place. I didn't know that within 15 minutes of me being wheeled into surgery, my sister would begin turning my home into a nightmare. And I didn't know my mother's kindness had a breaking point. But it did. And I was the one who led us there. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia pulled me under was the cold bite of the hospital air and the nurse adjusting the blanket around my legs. "Everything's going to be okay," she said softly, like she could promise it. I tried to hold on to one thought, just one, because fear multiplies when you let it. Piper is safe. Piper is home. Savannah is there. Then the ceiling lights blurred into a white river and my world shut off. Later, when I was awake and the pain was stitched into my body like a second heartbeat, I would learn the truth in the cruelest way possible, through the very cameras I had installed to protect my daughter. Savannah thought she turned them off. She didn't understand the system saved motion clips automatically to the cloud. And that was the only reason I didn't go insane, wondering what happened inside my own house while I lay unconscious on an operating table. Less than 15 minutes after the hospital doors swallowed me, Savannah did something that still makes my teeth clench when I remember it. She grabbed her phone, flopped onto my couch like she was the owner of the place, and typed fast with those perfectly manicured nails that always looked too expensive for someone who couldn't find the right job. Text to Tanner. Come over. Bring drinks. It's just one night. Then another text, group chat. Party at my sister's. She's in surgery. Free house. Like my life was a joke. Like my home was an Airbnb. In the first clip that saved, Piper was still in her crib, awake, standing and gripping the rails with both hands. Her face wasn't crying yet. Just confused. Because she was hearing unfamiliar footsteps, loud voices, doors opening and closing. The kind of noises that signal danger to a baby who doesn't have words for danger. Savannah walked into Piper's room only once at first, only long enough to toss her stuffed bear closer to her and say, "Shh, you're fine," without even bending down. Then she walked out, and the house filled, a blur of strangers, shoes on my rug, laughter spilling into corners that used to be quiet. Music turned up, bottles clinking, the sharp smell of beer spreading through the living room like a stain. And Savannah, smiling, glowing in attention, like she hadn't just been paid $800 to protect a tiny child. In one clip, Tanner hesitated at the doorway, glancing down the hall. "Are you sure the baby's okay?" he asked. I saw Savannah toss her hair and wave him off. "She's sleeping. Relax. This is the easiest money I've ever made." That line, "the easiest money," landed in my stomach like a brick. Because my $800 wasn't easy. It was overtime. It was the number I'd been trying not to look at in my bank account. It was the safety net I tore apart with my own hands because I believed my sister would step up. In the next clip, Savannah walked past the fridge and looked straight at my schedule sheet. 6 p.m. dinner. She smirked, then reached up and peeled it down like it annoyed her. I didn't know that then. But when I watched later, it felt symbolic, like the moment she decided my rules, my motherhood, my desperation didn't matter. 9:30 p.m. According to the schedule I had taped up, it was time for Piper's dinner. In the clip, Savannah stumbled into the kitchen with a beer already in her hand. She opened the fridge, stared at the organized bottles, the measured formula, my carefully labeled containers, and let out a long, dramatic sigh. "God," she muttered, "you're so intense, Elizabeth." Then she did the bare minimum. She scooped some food into Piper's mouth like she was feeding a dog, quick, impatient. Piper turned her head away, eyes shiny. Her little hands reached out, not toward the spoon, but toward Savannah's face. That's what babies do when they're looking for comfort. Savannah didn't notice, or didn't care, and she didn't change Piper's diaper. She didn't even check it, because seconds later, Savannah was back in the living room, laughing too loudly, leaning against Tanner as if the night belonged to her. "Just let her sleep," she said casually. "We won't have to deal with her until morning." Like Piper was a houseplant. 10:30 p.m. Piper cried. Not the fussy baby cry that says, "I'm bored." Not the whiny cry that says, "I want you." This was different. Even through the grainy camera audio, I could hear it later. The desperation. The raw, hoarse sound of a child who had already tried being patient and realized patience wouldn't save her. In the clip, Tanner glanced down the hallway again, uneasy. "Your niece is crying," he said. Savannah waved her hand without looking. "She'll stop." Piper's crying went on for 20 minutes. 20. In the footage, she stood in her crib, gripping the rails so hard her knuckles turned pale. Her face turned red. Tears streaked down her cheeks. Her mouth opened and closed around the only word she knew meant safety. "Mama! Mama!" She said it over and over again, voice cracking like a prayer, and no one came. At some point, Savannah grabbed her phone, tapped a few times, and the live monitoring feed on her screen went dark. She thought that meant there would be no record. But the system still caught the motion, still saved the clips. So I watched my baby cry until she couldn't. Then she stopped. Not because she was comforted, because she was exhausted. Piper sank down into the corner of her crib, still hiccuping, clutching her stuffed bear like it was her last lifeline. And in the hospital, I lay unconscious, not knowing my child was learning a lesson no child should ever have to learn. That crying doesn't always bring someone. 1:30 a.m. The party grew louder. The house looked like a different world in the clips. Empty beer bottles lining my coffee table, snack bags torn open, people spilling drinks near Piper's toys. Smoke blurred the air. Someone lit cigarettes inside my home, the same home where my daughter crawled on the floor every day. Savannah's laugh was sharp, careless. At one point, she slurred to someone. "Elizabeth thinks she's this perfect single mom. Like, relax, the baby's fine." That's when I felt something change in me, even watching later. It wasn't just rage. It was grief. Because Savannah didn't neglect Piper by accident. She did it because she resented me. Resented that I'd grown up, built a life, held responsibility like a weight I refused to drop. She wanted, even for one night, to knock me down from the pedestal she believed I was standing on. 2:15 a.m. Piper woke again. This was the time she always woke, her body clock precise, trained by routine and comfort. She would usually whimper, and I'd lift her up, warm her bottle, change her diaper, whisper into her hair until her breathing calmed. In the clip, Piper stood in her crib again. She cried, softer now, like she didn't fully believe crying would work. No one came. The living room was too loud. The bedroom door, my bedroom door, was shut. And then my baby did something I didn't even know she could do. She climbed. One leg over the rail, then the other, tiny fingers gripping. A wobble, a drop. My heart stopped inside my chest watching that later, because if she had fallen the wrong way, but she landed on her feet, shaky and terrified, and began to toddle. She pushed open her bedroom door and entered the chaos. Piper moved through the living room like a lost little ghost, bare feet on a floor littered with crumbs and sticky spills. She reached toward a bottle, touched it, tried to drink. She gagged at the bitter taste and started crying again, but quietly, because even she seemed to know nobody was listening. Then she picked up a piece of cold pizza from the floor and gnawed on it, because hunger doesn't care about appropriate toddler food. Her diaper sagged heavy between her legs. Her cheeks were wet, and in the background, Savannah's voice floated from the bedroom, laughing, unaware, or pretending to be unaware, that a living, breathing child was wandering unsupervised in a minefield. 3 a.m. Finally, the house went quiet. Guests left in messy waves. The music cut off. Doors slammed. Laughter faded. The cameras caught Savannah and Tanner stumbling into my bedroom, collapsing into my bed. The door shut. And Piper was alone. She wandered until she ran out of strength. In one clip, she plopped down on the floor near the couch, trembling. Her eyes scanned the room like she was searching for something familiar to anchor her. She crawled into the corner of the living room where I usually sat with her at night and read books. That was her safe spot. Except it wasn't safe anymore. Piper curled into a tight little ball on the rug, the fetal position children take when they're trying to make themselves small enough for the world to ignore them. No blanket. No stuffed bear. No warm arms around her. Just cold floor and empty air. By 4 a.m., she fell asleep among scattered bottles and trash. The early morning light creeping in showed tear tracks dried on her cheeks. It is the kind of image that would haunt any parent. It haunts me. The worst part? When I woke up after surgery, I still believed the version of reality I'd invented to survive the night. I pictured Piper safe in her crib. I pictured Savannah finally being responsible. I pictured my family holding the line for me, for once. I didn't know that while I lay there in a hospital bed, my daughter had spent the night learning what abandonment feels like. And I didn't know that the moment I opened my phone the next morning, something small would crack open inside me. A feeling I couldn't name yet, but would soon recognize as terror. Because Savannah wasn't answering, and the camera feed was black. And deep down, mothers always know, even before the proof arrives. I woke up Saturday morning with a dry throat, a sharp pull under my ribs, and one thought screaming louder than the pain. Piper. The nurse noticed my eyes darting toward the table where my phone lay. Easy, she said gently. The doctor wants to check your incision first. I need to call my sister, I replied, already reaching. She smiled, the practiced smile of someone who's comforted 1,000 worried parents. Your daughter is probably still asleep. One night without mom feels huge to you, not to her. I nodded, pretending that logic worked on fear. But when the doctor finished and stepped out, I grabbed my phone so fast my hands shook. One missed call. Savannah. I dialed again. Straight to voicemail. A small chill slid down my spine. I opened the security camera app. Black screen. No feed. My stomach dropped. I tried again. Nothing. By the third call, my hands were sweating. By the fourth, my heart was pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my ears. My parents arrived to pick me up just as I was fighting back tears. She's not answering, I told them, my voice thin. The cameras aren't working either. Mom placed a hand over mine. Elizabeth, honey. She was up all night with a toddler. She's probably just asleep. Dad didn't say anything. He just tightened his grip on the steering wheel and pulled out of the hospital parking lot faster than necessary. The drive home felt wrong. Too quiet. Too long. Every bump in the road pulled at my stitches, but I barely noticed. I kept calling Savannah, over and over. Nothing. When we turned onto my street, my chest tightened like someone had cinched a rope around it. Dad parked crooked in the driveway. I was already unbuckling. Wait, Mom said, worry creeping into her voice. I didn't. Pain tore through my side as I bent to grab the spare key under the mat. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped it once, twice. When the door finally opened, the smell hit me first. Beer, smoke, something sour. My living room looked like a storm had ripped through it. Bottles everywhere, food smeared into the carpet, toys overturned. My neat, careful preparation reduced to chaos. "Oh my God," Mom whispered, covering her mouth. Dad stood frozen beside her, jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack. Then I saw her. Piper, curled up on the rug near the couch, motionless. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. "Piper!" I screamed, pain forgotten as I rushed to her. I dropped to my knees and touched her arm. Warm. Thank God, warm. Her eyes flew open, wide and glassy with confusion. Then recognition hit and she broke. She sobbed so hard her body shook, tiny arms shooting out to grab me like she was afraid I'd disappear again. "I'm here," I whispered, choking. "Mama's here." Her diaper sagged heavy between her legs. Her clothes were sticky. Her skin was red and inflamed, angry rashes climbing her thighs. Behind me, Mom started crying. Dad didn't move. He stared at the wrecked room like he was cataloging evidence. "Where's Savannah?" he asked, voice dangerously calm. I didn't answer. I already knew. The bedroom door at the end of the hall was closed. I handed Piper to my mother, my hand steady despite the rage boiling inside me. "Mom," I said, voice cold, "please take her. I need to see something." Dad fell in step behind me without a word. Each step toward that door felt heavier than the last. I twisted the knob and shoved. The door flew open. Savannah and Tanner lay tangled in my bed, clothes strewn across the floor, the stench of alcohol thick in the air. Dad's voice exploded like thunder. "Savannah!" Both of them jolted awake. Savannah squinted against the light. "What, Elizabeth? Why are you home so early?" Tanner scrambled for the blanket, eyes darting like a trapped animal. I gripped the doorframe, shaking. "Piper was on the floor," I said, each word scraping out of my throat. Savannah frowned, annoyed. "She probably just—" I snapped. "She was alone, all night." Dad stepped forward, his presence filling the room. "Get dressed," he said to Tanner. "Get out. Now." Tanner didn't argue. He bolted. Savannah, on the other hand, crossed her arms. "You're overreacting," she muttered. "She's fine." I turned away before I did something I couldn't take back. In the bathroom, Mom was changing Piper's diaper, hands trembling as she cleaned her red, sore skin. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. Without looking up, Mom said, "This isn't your fault." Then she finished, lifted the heavy diaper in her hand, and walked down the hall. I followed. Dad and Savannah were still arguing when Mom stepped into the bedroom. "Savannah," Mom said calmly. Savannah turned, defiant. Mom didn't raise her voice. She threw the diaper. It hit Savannah square in the face, exploding with filth. The room went silent. "This," Mom screamed, voice breaking, "is what Piper sat in all night." Savannah shrieked, wiping at her face in horror. Tanner, half-dressed at the door, yelled, "What the hell is wrong with you, lady?" Dad took one step toward him. "Get out," he growled, "before I make you." Tanner ran. I stood frozen. Piper clutched to my chest, watching the woman who had never raised her voice cross a line none of us knew existed. In that moment, I understood something terrible. Some boundaries, once crossed, can never be restored, and our family would never be the same. The house fell into a silence so heavy it pressed against my ears. Savannah stood frozen, feces still smeared in her hair and across her cheek, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't decide whether to scream or cry. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small, not young, small. Like someone who had finally realized the weight of what she'd done and didn't know where to put it. Mom's hands were shaking. She stared at Savannah like she didn't recognize her anymore. "I have never done something like that," Mom said, her voice cracking. "Never. But you left a baby, my granddaughter, on the floor like she was nothing." Savannah's defiance collapsed into panic. "I didn't mean to. It just got out of control." Dad's voice cut through her excuses like a blade. "Enough." Savannah flinched. "Get dressed," Dad said. "Then get out." "No, wait, Dad." "Now." Savannah stumbled out of the bedroom, sobbing, dragging clothes on with shaking hands. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at Piper. 30 minutes later, the front door slammed behind her and Tanner. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't peaceful. It felt hollow. Piper, clean and exhausted, finally fell asleep on the couch after a bath and medicine for her rash. Her tiny chest rose and fell steadily, lashes dark against her cheeks. I sat beside her, one hand resting lightly on her back, afraid that if I let go, she'd disappear. Dad broke the silence by pulling out his phone. "You're coming back," he said into it, voice iron hard. Right now. You're cleaning this mess. No discussion." Savannah didn't argue. When she returned an hour later, she didn't say a word. She just started cleaning. Beer bottles into trash bags, ashtrays dumped, floors scrubbed, every movement stiff, mechanical. Occasionally, she'd glance toward the couch where Piper slept. Her eyes filling with tears, she wiped away quickly, like she didn't think she deserved them. Mom sat in the armchair, staring straight ahead, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "I lost control," she whispered finally. "I didn't know I had that in me." Dad squeezed her shoulder. "You protected your granddaughter. That's not losing control." When the house was finally clean, Savannah stood in the kitchen, head bowed, waiting. Dad motioned for her to sit. I carried Piper into the room and sat across from my sister. No one spoke at first. Then I did. "Should I call the police?" Savannah's head snapped up, terror flooding her face. "No, please, Elizabeth, I swear, I didn't mean—" Mom leaned forward, her voice cold now. "What you did is child neglect." Savannah broke. "I know," she sobbed. "I was wrong. Please don't call. I'll pay you back. I'll do anything." My hands trembled as I stroked Piper's hair. "CPS would investigate," I said quietly. "They'd ask why I left my child with someone who'd never cared for a baby alone. They'd question me." Dad nodded slowly. "And you're afraid they'd think Piper isn't safe with you?" "Yes," I whispered. "She's already been through enough." Savannah covered her face, shoulders shaking. "I didn't think. I just wanted to have fun." That sentence landed like a punch, while my daughter cried herself hoarse on a dirty floor. We talked for a long time after that, voices low, raw, exhausted. In the end, we agreed on consequences that felt harsh but fair. Dad spoke first. "Your mother and I are cutting off all financial support." Savannah stiffened but said nothing. Mom added, "You'll pay back the $800, plus cleaning costs." "I don't have money," Savannah whispered. "Then you get a job," Dad replied flatly. I took a deep breath, feeling something solid settle inside me. "Savannah won't see Piper for 6 months," I said. "Minimum." Savannah's head jerked up. 6 months, please, 3. 6, I repeated. "And only if you prove you've changed." Savannah nodded, tears dripping onto the table. Piper stirred in my arms, her lashes fluttering, and I held her closer. The storm had passed, but nothing would ever be the same again. The doctor's office smelled like antiseptic and crayons. Piper sat on my lap, gripping my finger with surprising strength while the pediatrician examined the red marks on her thighs. I held my breath with every gentle touch, bracing myself for bad news I wasn't sure I could survive. "They'll fade," the doctor said finally. "No lasting physical damage." I exhaled shakily, but when she added, emotionally, "Keep an eye on her sleep. Nightmares are common after distress," my chest tightened all over again. That night, Piper woke screaming. Not the soft cry of hunger or discomfort, but the raw panic of a child who suddenly remembered being alone. I held her for hours, rocking back and forth in the dark, whispering the same words over and over like a vow. "Mama's here. I'm not leaving. You're safe." Some nights she slept. Some nights she didn't. And on the nights she jolted awake, eyes wild, I hated myself for the choice I'd made. Because even one bad decision can echo in a child's body long after the danger is gone. My parents stepped in without hesitation. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Mom and Dad came over. No excuses, no half promises. They learned Piper's routines by heart. Dad sang her off-key songs. Mom read the same picture books over and over like repetition itself could stitch security back into her world. And slowly it worked. The nightmares came less often. Piper laughed again. The deep belly laughter that felt like sunlight. As for Savannah, for 6 months she stayed away. Not a single visit, not a single boundary crossed. Under my parents' supervision, she got a job at a shipping warehouse, rented a small apartment, paid back the $800, took a child development course, and signed a written agreement accepting every condition we'd set. She didn't argue. She didn't complain. She changed. Or at least, she tried. I didn't forgive her quickly. I didn't trust her easily. Some wounds don't close on a schedule. 6 months later, Savannah stood in my living room again. Her hands were trembling. She looked different, thinner, quieter, eyes no longer darting for attention. When Piper toddled toward her, Savannah froze like she was afraid to move wrong. "Hi, Piper," she whispered. Piper studied her carefully, then smiled. Not wide, not careless, but curious. Savannah knelt slowly, tears spilling down her face as she lifted my daughter with shaking arms. "I'm sorry," she whispered, more to Piper than to me. "I'm so sorry." I watched from the couch, my heart hammering, every instinct alert for danger. But nothing bad happened. Savannah just held her, carefully, like someone who finally understood what it meant to carry something fragile. Today, my life looks different. I have a more stable position at work, a schedule that bends when Piper needs me, a support system I don't take for granted anymore. Piper is growing fast, singing little songs, stringing together simple sentences, saying, "I love you, Mama," in a voice that heals something deep inside me every single time. My parents visit often, their laughter filling the house again. And Savannah is rebuilding, slowly, carefully. Watching her now, I understand something I didn't before. Some boundaries need to be steel. Others can become bridges if the person on the other side proves they deserve to cross. So I'll leave you with this question, the one that still lingers in my heart. Was I wrong to let my sister back into my daughter's life? Should some lines once crossed be permanent, or is there always room for change? Thank you for listening.